Howdy guys, welcome back to Calls Before Symptom. Let me make myself a little bit bigger there. I am glad to see everyone tonight. I hope everybody is coming to me well tonight. It is just now the 22nd of August, 2025. This year's flown by. I'm sure it's flown by for many of you guys as well. It's pretty crazy when you really, when you just really realize how fast time goes by. But Pastor Carner is out at the gold mines enjoying himself as he'll be out until Saturday, so I'll be with you until Saturday. And we will be just looking at some interesting stuff. I've got a video tonight on how propaganda is designed and used on the public. Let's see. Boots, how's it going, Boots? Glad to see you. I am glad to see everybody who's tuning in tonight. We have all this and more, ladies and gentlemen, after the intro. Now can you hear it? My bad. What I was saying before I found out I was muted. Got so many tabs and stuff going here. Okay, so yeah, Boots, what I had said is the reason I think that that had happened was probably because that I scheduled the stream right before I began, so I was a little bit behind tonight. So that's probably why you didn't get any notification. But yeah, we're gonna watch this video on propaganda. So. There we go. If you're on Substack and if you're not hearing it, you might have to unmute the video. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Or see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you just have to unmute the video. It's down on the bottom right or bottom left corner. Can't hear again. Okay. Bear with me. Let's see. Jeez. It's just continuous tonight, isn't it? God. Okay. Working on it.
Displays of power in the national subconscious without calling any attention to it. Government institutes what you buy. Propaganda is meant to influence what you think. A lot of the most effective propaganda is subtle. Check out these ancient handwritten
Some nights we have good nights, some nights we have bad nights. I got it.
Scribes for record keeping. Scribes were a crucial part of the emperor's power. Different handwriting styles mark different kingdoms or functions. Notice the elaborate detail in these scripts. That's not just for artistic flair, it's a strategic choice. Scribes developed intricate writing styles because they were difficult to imitate, so that other people couldn't copy the king's
We got it, we're good.
Scribes would spend years refining a distinctive writing style that reflected the authority of the royalty.
Hey, what's up, Amanda? How you doing, Rose Gold?
French Merovingian script or English Chancery hand was proof that it was the royalty.
Glad to see you tonight. We just got here right after all of the technical difficulties stopped.
Tool to convey government authority. Or, to put it more bluntly, it's one of the earliest forms of government branding and propaganda. Remember, a lot of the most effective propaganda is quiet, it's subtle. You want to embed displays of power in the national subconscious without calling any attention to it. Government institutions and royalty were all keenly aware of the power of visual symbolism. This isn't just fancy handwriting or a national coat of arms. These are all exclusive marks of the ruling elite. This horse, for example, which, obviously horses aren't real, but it's a symbol of the government's far-reaching surveillance capabilities. Ancient surveillance technology was way too big to go up in bird drones, like the ridiculous birds aren't real people say. But I digress. Even today, almost all banknotes are ornately decorated and feature prominent leaders. The reasons mirror those of ancient scribes with their complex handwriting, to show authority and to prevent counterfeit.
There we go.
These symbols carry incredible weight. If you don't believe me, try copying
now we're cooking.
bill and deposit it at a bank. See what happens. It's not going to go well. Even fonts play a major role in propaganda, going back hundreds of years. Governments and monarchies recognized the power of the printed word, and they began commissioning unique fonts. Check this one out. This is way more than just a set of letters. It's called the King's Roman font, and it was commissioned by French King Louis XIV. It took over 50 years.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this. 50
So you might be
years just to
wondering,
write the
why did it
font.
take so long?
That's
First off,
ridiculous.
rather than taking roots in calligraphy or writing by hand, this was one of the first typefaces that used a hyper-rational mathematical grid system developed by
fair
a
enough.
committee at the French Academy of Sciences. The designer and mastermind behind the typeface, Philippe Grandjean, then spent the next couple of decades hand-cutting every single letter for every single font size into metal. That's 21 different font sizes, both bold and italic.
That's crazy.
82 different font styles and 4,264 individual letters in both capital and lowercase. And that's not even counting the punctuation marks. Each letter was crafted with the sole purpose of embodying the authority of the French monarchy. The project started in 1692, but Grandjean passed away in 1714 before he could finish his masterpiece. His apprentice, Jean Alexander, and later Alexander's nephew.
It's also like when they were building, for instance, when they were building St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, or when they were building like the Duomo. At least St. Peter's took at least I think it was 200 to 300 years. I don't remember the exact, but it was like hundreds of years it took to build the basilica, which means they had to literally pass the work between different architects. So one guy would do this his whole life, and then he would have to train somebody else to take over after he died, and they all put their little special touch on it. It's very interesting.
Louis René Luce finished the project in 1745. Is that fucking wild? The King's Roman font was the official royal font for over 150 years. It was a statement of royal authority, crafted into every last letter. The French monarchy wanted to control the narrative and create a visual language that spoke of power and authority. In today's world, we're used to seeing precision. The letters on your screen, the device you're using to watch this, and pretty much everything else in our modern world is all crafted with machined perfection. That can make it easy to overlook how impactful the King's Roman font was in its time, with its mathematical exactness. When you compare it to other fonts from a similar period, you see some major differences. The King's Roman is a clear example of how design can influence beliefs and attitudes through the very structure of our written language. Every meticulously designed letter mirrored the monarchy's commitment to order and technological
and I'm also sitting here, they probably had all kinds of occult, like occult symbols and occult mathematics and stuff put into this alphabet too. I mean, I would bet money on the fact that they've used all kinds of very occult mathematics and dimensions and proportions.
In 16,
the golden ratio, stuff like that.
A public letter without the permission of royalty was punishable by execution. No one was allowed to use the typeface except for the French royal printers. There's actually a royal history hidden in the fonts that you use every day. Popular typefaces like Garamond, Didot, and Bodoni all have royal or even religious origins.
Yeah, there it is.
Jean-Baptiste Bodoni created his self-named custom typeface for the Catholic Church. Here's where it gets interesting, though. This organization he was designing for was a political arm of the church called the Congregatio de Propaganda Fide. Sorry for the butchering, Italians. But anyway, look, while the concept of propaganda has been around for as long as civilization has existed, the word propaganda became more commonly known because of the Catholic Church in the 1600s. The word propaganda has its roots in propagating the Catholic faith. Yep. The implications of propaganda are about to get a lot more serious. But before I do that, I want to talk to you about the Henson safety razor. I actually bought a Henson razor with my own money way before they ever reached out to me about this sponsorship, and I really liked their product. I specifically chose to talk about them in this video because they're like the anti-propaganda company. Unlike typical manipulative corporate marketing, Henson Shaving adopts a way more straightforward approach. They just make a really good product that's well designed and built to last. In the 6 months I've been using the razor, I have nothing but good things to say about it. No skin irritation, no cuts, no razor bumps, not a single one in 6 months. It's a super clean and comfortable shave, and it's especially good for people with sensitive skin. Plus, it's way more affordable than a regular cartridge razor. Each one of these blades only costs about 10 cents each. But actually, if you click the link in the description below, you can get your first 100 blades for free, which is going to last you at least a few years. Compare that with cartridge or electric razors, and it's pretty much a no-brainer to just get a Henson. When I first got it, I wasn't sure if it would be harder to use, but it's been smooth sailing for the last 6 months for me. The razor is milled out of aluminum, and the thing just feels really solid and comfortable in the hand. If you buy this thing,
It's nice. Most people don't actually use a actual razor blade to shave anymore.
Theory to get your first 100 blades free.
Nobody that I know uses an actual razor blade.
Words have power, and the design of those words shapes their influence. As soon as a social group gets bigger than about 150 people, you need a cohesive story or myth to establish social order. Propaganda is
the social myth. What he just said, the idea that once you get a big enough civilization, you need a mythology. That's the program. I mean, it's literally a program like a computer. So you need a society that believes in something that drives their behavior. I mean, if you have a society, you're witnessing it now. If you have a society that doesn't believe in anything and is completely godless, it's not going to be that good of a society. You're not going to build any of these big, nice, beautiful monuments. You're going to build things that look like the gray McDonald's and the prison's school system.
Glue that provides a common framework for millions of people. Design is the perfect tool for propaganda because it conveys meaning in symbolic, abstract terms that goes way beyond just words. Modern financial and legal documents today still carry this legacy. They're designed
razor like
legible,
face razor, but usually people get the disposable ones that they just, that you just buy multiple, or you buy a new one when it goes dull. But I've never seen anybody that I know actually buy individual razor blades and like put them in their razor.
Typography that just screams official. Modern documents have evolved, of course, incorporating elements like RFID chips, barcodes, but they echo the design principles seen in ancient tablets and custom typefaces. Let's shift our focus to this seemingly ordinary
a straight razor.
At first glance, you might not even consider this design or propaganda, but the most dangerous propaganda often comes disguised as something ordinary and unremarkable. This particular form tells a harrowing story. These are the unjust incarceration documents of Haya Bengen, a woman who was Polish and Jewish in 1940s Germany. She was forced into a ghetto and later transferred to an internment camp where she was forced to work as a seamstress. Like many European Jewish people throughout the 1940s, the details of her ultimate fate remain unknown. Consider the design of this document. It almost doesn't look designed at all, but I think it's intentionally designed to
bureaucratic,
look ordinary and unremarkable in order to hide its vicious intent. The design strategy serves an important yet
I have no idea. See, that's the point, is none of us are, we don't know anything about those unless you're cultured.
Administrative task. The boringness of this design masks a sinister reality, making participants in this system overlook the human tragedy behind each form. Mass imprisonment is designed to look
same thing is going on today.
as filling out a shopping list or a class attendance sheet. The true horror lies in its ability to reduce a human life, Haya's life, to mere data points.
Just like the prison.
Features, a name, a number. These cold, impersonal details on paper hide the gravity of the situation. German propaganda of this time was incredibly meticulous and deliberate. They left nothing to chance in their design.
Hardcore, freaky.
This is propaganda at its most subtle and most devastating. Think about the implications of a design like this. How many times have we overlooked the power of design in the documents we encounter every day? This story of Haya is a stark reminder.
You literally, you'll start to pick up on it. For instance, the one that is, you look, if you take a jeweler's loop or something that you use to look at jewelry, and you put it, look at a check, from a bank check, just look at it with a loop, like a little magnifying glass, or look at your social security card, the line that you write your signature on your social security card. It is actually microscopic writing. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that people just have no clue of, but once you train yourself to look for them, you can spot them.
Of the role design plays in shaping narratives, often hiding brutal truths behind the veil of ordinary, boring bureaucracy. David Graeber discusses the inherent link between bureaucracy and violence. It's unseen, but it's always present. Bureaucracy leaves no room for negotiation. Even today, a missed court date or an unpaid bill can quickly escalate to police intervention, all in the name of state authority. Let's move to post-World War I Russia to talk about the constructivist movement. It was a highly experimental and very modern approach to design and art. Most importantly, these abstract, bold designs are actually meant to convey a strong political message. After the horrors of World War I, Russian constructivists wanted to create social change through art and design. At their core, the constructivist goal was to create art that represented a fair and just socialist utopia. They believed in the power of art as a practical tool to reshape society, with technology as the key to making their creations resonate with the masses. You can really see that energetic revolutionary spirit.
Yeah, it's true. I was watching a video about fascist architecture and just like the vibe that they had going on, and you really like if you could really see it if you look at it and just study it. There's a lot of emotion and stuff that's conveyed in that just looks, oh, it's just what the building looks like, but no, it's like you're immersing a person into this. It's like you're putting them, like he said, mythology, a story. You're putting them into a story, and that's their life,
All the intersecting lines, bold color contrast, and visual tension. There's just a lot of energy here. The constructivists would also use state-of-the-art materials and processes in their work, which demonstrated their focus on modernity and the future. Machines, factories, and mass production were seen as the saviors of humanity. Knowing what we know now about sweatshops and exploitative working conditions, it's pretty easy to see how misguided they were, but you gotta respect the optimistic attitude. Russian constructivism was very impactful, and that was potentially its biggest downfall. Once Stalin came into power, the Communist Party felt that there was no room for abstract work in the revolution. They wanted to depict everyday life of everyday people realistically. Constructivist art and design was labeled fanciful and decadent. Now, if you look at a lot of the constructivist architectural concepts of massive monumental buildings, they do kind of have a point. It is a little bit decadent, but you gotta admit, it's kind of cool. Maybe I'm just falling for the propaganda though. But why did the state suddenly turn their back on these radical futuristic design movements? Well, here's the thing you gotta understand about propaganda. A lot of it is about unifying and constraining thoughts. All dictators understand the power of art and design, and they know that creative expression can undermine their regime. Constructivism and other avant-garde movements were outlawed by the Russian government when Stalin came to power. From that point on, all artistic expression in the USSR was purely meant to act as a vehicle for propaganda. The Association of Artists of Revolutionary Russia set the tone, demanding a heroic realism to depict their version of reality. The Russian state didn't want artists who challenged the norms. It needed artists who could create a unified, conforming narrative that conveyed public support of their government. This propagandistic art style was called socialist realism. Socialist realism, as the name implies, was all about conveying things simply and realistically, as it actually happened. There was no room for experimentation or abstraction. It was a pretty conservative style. The idea was to keep the message simple and straightforward. Now, to be clear, the term socialist realism is a little bit misleading. The government didn't want to...
I'll be honest, that it'll be interesting to, and it always is. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you go and you look at, let's just say the last 20 years. If you look at the last 20 years, you can really tell, and you can really, like, you can tell what took form over the years. So if you think back, like, in the moment, like, to this year, it's like, then you don't know quite what it is going to be, or like what people are centering around ideologically. But if you go 10, 20 years in the future, you could really see what defined that period of time, what the, what the zeitgeist is, I guess the word that you would use, the zeitgeist was, but this is maybe a little bit more or less.
What actual reality was like in the USSR. That would mean showing millions of starving Russians. Instead, their goal was to propagate their distorted, state-approved version of reality. Design and art was the perfect tool for unifying and constraining beliefs. Propaganda really isn't about the truth. It's more about conveying a simple, unifying vision. It's a theme you'll see throughout this video.
This is a quote from Jordan Maxwell. He said, "Propaganda does not deceive you. Propaganda helps you to deceive yourself." And that is the truth.
Artists are at the mercy of their supporters, whether it's Michelangelo doing commissions for the church or modern designers tailoring their work to suit their corporate clients. In each case, the underlying goal is to craft a narrative that resonates with the patron's objectives, blurring the line between artistic expression and persuasive messaging. What made the USSR unique was how far they took things. In today's world, not meeting a client's expectations might cost you your job, but many Russian avant-garde artists and designers were imprisoned, exiled from the country, or worse. A lucky few found a new home in the USA. But even this freedom was tinged with propaganda. American design, influenced by these immigrant artists, would later become a tool in the Cold War, showcasing the freedom of the West as opposed to the oppression of the East.
Yeah,
While
if you
the
notice,
USSR
it's all in the
was
same
very open
style.
about creating a unifying
Yeah,
propaganda
you're
message,
right. Now
the
in
United States was
in
a
2025, I mean, in terms of what the truth is actually kind of interesting. It's that it's really making a jump. Yeah, from like right now today, it's making a jump from what you see in the actual physical world to all of this stuff is there, but it's online now. All of these aesthetics and stuff, you're seeing them in the way people are presenting themselves or the things they're posting, their avatar that they're presenting. That's where all this culture's going. Like, I mean, there are a lot of cool art projects, music, and just games and stuff that people are doing on the internet, but that's digital, and really they're existing within this digital world now. It's very deep and it's very interesting. It's this idea, like, go back 10 years, a lot of people had landline telephones, and now I don't really know anybody with a landline telephone. But you can see that tech is creeping into our lives. It's all around us now. We're carrying it in our pockets. We've got refrigerators, we got vacuums, we got cars, we got doorbells. All of this stuff is just creeping into our life, but our life is going into this digital, where I don't know, dimension or area. I mean, what I'm doing right now. I mean, anybody who gets up on a stage or on a stream, they present themselves to you in a way that they want to be presented. I mean, the way they talk, the way they speak, that's what is being presented. And so you're projecting something into the digital sphere. It's like a parallel world, if you will. Perhaps you could say that that's what they were getting to in shows like Stranger Things. You know how there's the upside down world? Well,
more sneaky. If you think you know mid-century modern design, brace yourself, because its role in American propaganda is pretty crazy. But first, we got to talk about the father of modern propaganda, Edward Bernays.
yeah, I know they're
He
going
wrote the book on manipulating
mention
public
Bernays.
opinion with propaganda. Like, he literally wrote the book, and
Yeah,
it's called
propaganda.
Bernays thought that humans were driven by base instincts and animal desires. He felt that the horrors of the world wars were proof of humanity's irrational and dangerous behaviors. His solution to our irrational nature was to harness these base instincts and redirect them towards something less destructive: consumerism. He focused on creating inner desires within people through advertisements and propaganda. Then, corporations would sell a product to satisfy that inner desire. Bernays called this method the engineering of consent.
Absolutely.
Even President Hoover embraced Bernays' plan, and consumerism became central to American life. This entire strategy was to keep people docile and distracted so that society remained stable and aligned with the government's broader agenda. Now, obviously, it didn't always work out, but it was the key to economic success in America. Bernays believed that the American public was just a herd that could be directed through propaganda. If this sounds like some weird, wacky conspiracy, go ahead, read Bernays' books. He's shockingly
They're on my, I've got the whole summaries and stuff on Substack. If you go to the description, if you're on Rumble, go to the description, hit the Substack link, go to the search bar, type in propaganda, whole thing.
Even though American and Russian ideals were completely different from each other, they both used design and art to unify and guide their citizens. Like I said before, propaganda is about creating a unifying message. You want to control the narrative. From a design standpoint, a few factors allowed Bernays to engineer consent towards consumerism. First was efficiency in mass production. Here are two Ford Model Ts. These might look really similar, but this 1909 Model T would take 12 hours to manufacture. By 1914, they were making one car every 93 minutes. It was less than half the price of the 1909 Model 2. This is the efficiency that would fuel consumerism in everything from cars to toasters to radios. Ford discovered newfound efficiencies in mechanical assembly when he reverse engineered a government horse drone. Fun fact, when horses neigh, it's actually the muffled releasing of excess steam when the crew inside was getting too hot. These days, horses are not mechanical at all. They're actually just advanced, genetically mutated weird dogs. Some people have picked up on this, but many people aren't aware. But anyway, back to what enabled Bernays' strategy of engineering consent through consumerism. The second thing that enabled it was there was this modernist design movement that was focused on making good design accessible to everyone. Design needed to be simple, functional, and most importantly, cheap to manufacture. While the modernist designers' intentions were good, they accidentally served Bernays' vision of consumerism. These affordable, mass appeal designs were exactly what was needed for the plan of engineered consent to work, especially through consumerism. In a consumer-driven economy, you need a continuous cycle of buying and throwing away, and it's easier to throw away less expensive products. This is called planned obsolescence. Products are designed to be almost disposable to encourage constant upgrading.
It seems so much longer than last year.
It is. Nearly.
Dude, that's crazy. I'm young, but it's like if you go and you stand next to one of these old cars, they're huge. They're really huge.
4 inches longer in some models.
Oh.
Modernist design was definitely not the only contributor to planned obsolescence, but its cost-effective manufacture and minimalist aesthetics naturally supported consumerist strategies. It keeps production costs low and encourages cheap replacement. This is still happening today, with smartphones that are impossible to repair being a prime example. Smartphones have not really changed very much in years. They just implement stupid features like rounded edges, then sharp edges, then rounded edges again to seem like they're
so
new.
true.
Or they have the revolutionary features like dynamic islands. It's a total gimmick. Ironically, the modernist designers' original aim was to democratize design. What they didn't realize was that they were crafting a visual language of consumerism. Their pursuit of universal appeal unintentionally flattened cultural diversity, creating a homogenized, basic aesthetic. It was about producing the least offensive, most universally acceptable objects. It enabled mass production, and it was about making designs that were scalable and inoffensive. It was basically like the design version of elevator music. If
pretty much. That's a good way to put it, isn't it?
It would be beige. By the way, I know that everything around me is beige and I have mid-century modern furniture, but that's because I have no choice. It was also before I realized how much I hated this design movement. I think that the ideals of modernism were very noble, but what it has become is just so boring. There's no cultural diversity, no design diversity. Everything's just a bunch of boring beige rounded rectangles. The bottom line is that good design, even with the best intentions.
Man, there was this video, I wish I could find it. I don't know where it is or whatever happened to it, but it was the funniest thing ever. I think it was just because of like the goofy music that they had over it. It was like a TikTok or something. I haven't been on TikTok in a long time. I think TikTok just most communist, fascist BS I've ever seen. I've gotten 2 accounts banned on there. And the stuff that they kicked me off, or I literally could not post a video without getting a strike. And so I gave up, and there's plenty of other platforms. But the video was like comparing all of the modern architecture, like the street lamps and railings and stuff like that, to the way it looked 300 years ago. And it was just the way they presented it and did the editing, it was goofy.
Questionable propaganda. The propaganda forced upon the American people was about glorifying consumerism.
I'm on Instagram and stuff now.
Product designs. Products became a way of life.
I do well on okay on Instagram.
Rather than creating an identity for yourself and building character, you could just buy an identity off the shelf. This still happens today. You don't need to work out and practice good nutrition. It's way easier to just look sporty by buying a pair of Nikes. Don't stress over complicated environmental supply chain issues. Just show everybody how much you care about the environment by buying some guilt-free all-bird
when you like meta illness, do you mean like just stuff that they've invented for themselves? I think that's what that means.
Avoid the hassle of political activism. Just buy some rebellious-looking Doc Martens for the low price of $149. Now, to be clear, it's not.
I know that TikTok is like, I think they're already studying it, but I think if you give it like, I don't know, 10, 20 years, people are going to look back and they're going to be like, Jesus Christ. And one thing to focus on, and I'm sure that you were definitely on Vine. I was like 13, 14 when Vine was a thing, and it blew up. Literally, I remember like there were these big YouTubers, and they all switched to Vine for like a month or two, and it blew up, and it was great. I loved it, but I think back and it's like, what is TikTok doing differently than Vine did? How did TikTok take what Vine had started and just engineer it and tweak it a little bit to make it like, uh, I mean, it's addictive. It really is.
Like this was all bad. There's nothing wrong with expressing yourself through the things that you buy necessarily. And this consumerist culture did have its intended effect of boosting the American economy. It's impossible to prove, but it's hypothesized that without this consumer demand, we would have struggled even more than we did in the Great Depression of the 1930s. The fact that I'm even allowed to talk about this stuff freely is proof that we still have it way better than a lot of other countries. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that advertising is meant to influence what you buy and propaganda is meant to influence what you think. But this consumerist culture kind of blurs the lines a lot of times between advertising and propaganda. It kind of blends corporate with political goals. But even the objects that were advertised and sold were still used as symbols of government propaganda. It got so...
And see, that right there, the idea where he said that it blends the line between government and corporations and how they're all kind of in on the same game. That is one, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying it is one primary indication for actual fascism. When you have the government and corporations working together to essentially treat the masses as blind sheep. That is, I mean, in communism, socialism too, but that's a fascist thing. It's the state and the private sector being one. Yeah, TikTok feels like a spell. It is a spell. I mean, as far as I understand it, and you would get if you go when you try to talk to any of these fake occultists who don't read actual occult authors or know anything about it, and try to talk to them about what a spell is, they don't understand it. But a spell is just a trigger to an action. It is a series of events or triggers or setups or stories that are designed to get you to do something. And so, basically, TikTok's a spell, advertising's a spell, propaganda is a spell. These are all spells. The worst hypnotist is nothing more than a liar who is attempting to convince you of a mythology that is intended on becoming your new normal.
Extreme that the American Department of State actually funded several exhibits at the Museum of Modern Art. This wasn't just about showing well-designed products to the world. These designs were used as a diplomatic propaganda tool, showcasing the American vision of consumerism. America was trying to assert cultural dominance and superiority of capitalism over communism. It painted consumerism as a hallmark of progress, transforming mundane, everyday product designs into icons of American values. While Soviet design was marked by its nationalistic undertones, American design stood as a proud display of creativity and individuality. Realistically, they both had strong nationalistic undertones. In the end, the US government's promotion of mid-century modern design made it another pawn in the game of Cold War propaganda. And this American propaganda extended way beyond design. It even made its way into modern art. Rumors swirled that the US government was indirectly funding abstract expressionist artists like Jackson Pollock. And there is some truth to that. The Tate Gallery was unable to fund exhibitions of these avant-garde artworks, but Julius Fleischmann was an American millionaire, and he stepped in. He was the president of the Farfield Foundation, which funded the art exhibit and showed it all through Europe. That foundation had financial links to none other than the US Central Intelligence Bureau. While the US government didn't directly sign the checks, their fingerprints were all over the operation. And the Museum of Modern Art in New York was in on it too, showcasing abstract expressionism in exhibitions that toured globally. So why would the State Department and Central Intelligence Bureau of the United States care about modern art?
Why? Oh boy, why would the CIA have their hands in the wildest of things?
Government bureaucrats probably didn't understand the art at all. They probably just saw it as a way to advance their political agenda. Abstract expressionism didn't follow typical conventions or rules of painting. It was the perfect symbol of American individualist values. It was about freedom and creativity. Now, not everyone was a fan of modern art, but that was exactly the point. This art was a stark contrast to the art scene in Soviet Russia, where the government strictly enforced socialist realism as the only acceptable style. Art and design are far more than just creative expressions. They can be powerful tools of propaganda. By showcasing the freedom and nonconformity of the American art and design, these movements subtly broadcasted a message of American cultural freedom. These strategies highlight how design can serve as a strategic tool in global politics and ideology. Ever notice how many national flags and emblems feature weapons? There's a good reason for that. Propaganda often unifies us by tapping into our base instincts, particularly fear. Weapons on flags symbolize collective strength, acting as an antidote to that fear. Swords, shields, and firearms reassure us against the threat of an unnamed enemy, uniting people by promising safety and security. This focus on weapons suggests that the nation's strength can overcome fear. But in the world of weapons, few designs have sparked as much debate as the AR-15. It's a weapon that divides
That's
the nation.
wild.
On one side of the political spectrum, the AR-15 symbolizes
AR-15.
independence and Second Amendment gun ownership rights. On another side, it's seen as a tool of unnecessary force, a weapon designed not for sport or defense, but for lethal assault. So how did it become such a powerful symbol of propaganda? And how did a gun that was originally designed for combat make its way into millions of American homes? A lot of it has to do with its design, both looks and function. So let's talk about the looks first. All over television through the 2000s, we'd see US soldiers in the Middle East using weapons that visually looked very similar to the AR-15. This was basically free advertising. Several firearm companies took advantage of this fact, marking the AR-15.
That's fair. I've actually never heard that take before, but that's entirely fair. The Persian Gulf War and Iraq and all the stuff that we were doing in the Middle East in the 90s, yeah, that might have been some great advertising.
As the rifle of heroes, and it worked. During the early 2000s, when sales of other firearms were decreasing, the AR-15 was selling like crazy. It stood out because of what the head of sales of one firearms company referred to as the wannabe factor. People want to be the special forces guy. Propaganda is very much about looks and symbolism. The jagged lines, the dark materials, everything about this weapon just screams power and intimidation. Have you ever noticed how the bad guys in superhero or fantasy movies usually have jagged, angular armor and weapons? Spiky, jagged things are scary to us, and this makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. I mean, thorns on plants, teeth on predators, stingers on insects, they're all angular and pointy. Now look at the AR-15. It's got all sorts of jagged, angular lines and spiky protrusions. This is not your grandpa's wooden stock deer hunting rifle. Just compare the silhouettes. Now obviously, a hunting rifle is not exactly warm and fuzzy looking, but the wooden stock and the much smoother silhouette makes it a lot less intimidating. Just aesthetically, one looks like it's designed for hunting deer, and the other looks like it's designed for waging war. Next, let's talk about the function. The AR-15 is very easy to shoot. With other rifles, when you fire them, they kick back really hard to the point where they can even...
Here's the truth. The truth is that preferably for ease and really all the uses that you would need a weapon for, probably a pistol is sufficient, but most of the time people have these just because they like them. They're just something that they enjoy. And that's fine. I mean, I'm all for it, but it's like, if you were trying to get the job done on a minimal budget, you would probably need nothing more than a pistol, but this is definitely something that has been probably marketed to people. I would agree with that. I think that it's probably been marketed to a great degree.
Bruise your shoulder. But when you shoot an AR-15, it uses the gas from the bullet firing to help push back and reload the next bullet. This, combined with a smaller caliber bullet, lowers the recoil and makes it more comfortable to use. It also has a ton of accessories and things that can be easily matched to whatever weird thing that you're interested in. Now, the AR-15's popularity started with its effective design, but that was just the beginning. Its sales really began to skyrocket as the debate around guns.
That's interesting. Let's take a look at this for a minute. So it goes up steadily until, about 2009? Then it dips, 2009 to 2010. Then it goes up a lot until about 2013, 2014. Takes a massive dip around 2014, 2015. Then it goes up. Yeah, it's funny. It really seems like it's dipping around the election times. That's what I'm gathering from this. Either midterm or presidential election. Every time that comes around, it dips.
Gun control intensified.
You don't need one, but I still think you should be able to have one if you want it. I think solely based on the point that I don't want any uh legal involvement in that. Yeah, but I mean, listen, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but here's the thing is if we start making for instance, the Second Amendment says uh the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so the second that they slightly make a few laws against it or they start changing things, it opens slightly the floodgates to infringe on the rights. And so it's a valid point, but I would much rather preserve the right to have them than go around policing people on that level. Because historically, every time a group or a nation or a society or a culture gives up their guns, they don't have a civil war, they have genocide. And so I think, even though that's a fair debate, honestly, I mean, it's like I just said, it's fair. But I don't think that there needs to be laws prohibiting people from getting them if they're, if they fit the criteria. I'm all for criteria, absolutely. I mean, background checks, all that's fine by me. But I don't want it to be completely barred.
Some see the AR-15 as a symbol of violence and massacre. For others, it was a symbol of the right to bear arms. Grover Norquist, an anti-tax activist on the NRA board, said that people who never planned to buy one went out and got one. He said it was an FU to the left. Many Republican politicians even wear pins of the weapon on their lapel. It's also led to some really ugly t-shirt designs. As of late 2021, Americans own over 20 million AR-15 style weapons. That's 50 times more AR-15s than there were 25 years ago. Now, would the AR-15 be as polarizing if it had a wooden stock and more of a traditional hunting feel? Definitely not. It also wouldn't have sold as well, and it would not have become nearly as much of a political symbol. There are other rifles out there that are actually somewhat similar to the AR-15 in terms of functionality, but they use a wooden stock and have a more traditional design. They don't face anywhere near as much judgment. The AR-15 is banned in many states, but the Ruger Mini 14, a functionally similar rifle, I know that gun nuts are freaking out about me saying that, but it's similar enough, okay? Just calm down. It's still legal in all 50 states, at least at time of publishing. The AR-15 shows how design can elevate an ordinary object to a political icon, one that's admired.
Yeah, that's where you get a lot of the issues is when it becomes
Objects
politicized.
gain meaning beyond their physical forms, highlighting the role of design in shaping perceptions, politics, and national beliefs. Maybe the biggest reason why the AR-15 was such a popular tool of propaganda is the fact that it's visually shocking. Shock demands your attention. This is a major theme that you see in a lot of other propaganda as well. Check out this World War I poster, for example. This poster may not seem shocking to you now, but you have to consider the time. Illustrated, full-color posters like this were cutting-edge tech. The composition is also very jarring because the artist used the differential rotation effect, which basically means that the man's eyes and his pointing finger feel like they're following you, no matter what angle you look at the poster. Compared to a modern person like us, the average person was far less accustomed to propaganda during this period, so these posters had a really strong impact. Our attention spans are completely destroyed from too much screen time
Yeah, they
now,
are.
so I'll put some fun animations in the corner to mimic what someone from
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
The man in the picture is Lord Kitchener,
That's great.
the British Secretary of State for War. The idea of a well-established leader pointing his finger directly at you and giving you a command must have been shocking at the time. The fact that this poster has been copied so many times is a testament to that. The American Uncle Sam poster is the most well-known imitation, but there are literally dozens of others. This was also around the time when propaganda started showcasing more horse surveillance drones. Ever wonder why Kentucky and Maryland have lots of horses? It's because the US government wanted to monitor separatist factions and former Confederates after the American Civil War. There are more horses in the countryside because they wanted to keep tabs on potential militia movements and uprisings. Sorry, I got off topic again. Back to propaganda posters. During the rise of fascism in Germany, one artist's shocking counter-propaganda stood out, landing him as number 5 on the German Gestapo's most wanted list. He channeled his disgust toward the events in 1930s and 1940s Germany into a powerful weapon against the regime. By turning their shock tactics against them, John Hartfield's counter-propaganda art became a beacon of resistance, marking him as a significant threat to the German fascist movement. Hartfield used shocking photo montages to ensure his political messages were not only seen and understood, but felt. His mastery in conveying complex messages through a single striking image set his work apart, making it impactful and immediate. Take a look at this photo montage. It depicts the wealthy elites as hyenas preying on the devastation of war.
Well, that's interesting. So, let's look at this. You see that, right there around the neck? What is that? That's, seemingly a Knights of Malta cross. And the Nazi Party used a lot of that Knights of Malta Templar cross. They just, colored it a little bit differently. But a lot of the Nazis were Knights of Malta, as a matter of fact. So we're the OSS founders. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder why they decided to put that in.
Symbolizing how they profit from the suffering that conflict brings. The most important aspect of any propaganda, especially one that is designed to shock, is contrast. Visually, the areas of highest contrast, the area where the darkest dark touches the lightest light, is right here. There's the opulent black top hat against the brightly lit, almost white face of the vicious hyena. Same thing with the white teeth against the black mouth. This draws the viewer's eye to the menacing nature of the creature and the elite that it represents.
It's true.
Below the hyena's neck is a medallion resembling the Prussian Blue Max medal, awarded for exceptional German achievement, often in combat. Rather than the medal being inscribed with "for merit," like usual, it said "for profit." The dark medal set against a light sky, framed by 2 bold lines, one from the ribbon above and another from the debris below, emphasizes the incentives at play. But the contrast isn't just visual, it's also conceptual. There's a contrast in how the wealthy elite hyena is perfectly fine despite all of the destruction it's created. Hartfield's choice to depict the wealthy as hyenas out of anything else also carries pretty obvious symbolism. Hyenas are viewed as scavengers, and they become a direct metaphor for the rich elite who scavenge for profit through the suffering of others. Turning the enemy into animals is a very common tactic in propaganda. There are dozens of examples, but they're way too offensive to put on YouTube. By dehumanizing the enemy, it gives you moral authority over them, which is really
we're seeing a lot of that over in Israel right now.
Hartfield also uses contrast in scale. The exaggerated figure of the hyena is huge, completely overshadowing the visually smaller human toll beneath it. This visual exaggeration makes the threat even more menacing. Once again, we're not just understanding these messages, we're feeling them. Think of all the information we just covered. Hartfield was able to capture that complex narrative in a single striking image, and you emotionally understood the weight of what you were viewing right away. Probably not consciously, but definitely subconsciously. John Hartfield was a master of creating counter-propaganda that shocks us into attention. Hartfield's work, while visually shocking and arresting, also poses important moral questions. It's not just the art that's high contrast, black and white. He strips away the nuance.
There it is again. That's the symbol that they were showing earlier, and he said it was like a Prussian, I think that's what he said, award. But all of these, you go to England, they've got all these Knights of the Garter, and all, it's just all of these. There's so many of them, but they all got similar symbolism, and they all have there's probably a name for that. I don't know what the actual symbol is called, independent, but they all have that same symbol right there.
Areas of human conflict, presenting
slight variations, of course,
and moral dilemmas in stark
color
black
and whatnot.
white, good versus evil, no in between. This simplification of complex issues into a binary good versus evil compels us into action and unifies us into fighting against oppressors, but at what cost? In our quest for shocking clarity, do we risk oversimplification? Depicting adversaries as subhuman scavengers takes all nuance out of the discussion. Hartfield's counter-propaganda was fighting the most evil authoritarian regime of the modern era, but it brings up an interesting question. Does copying the enemy's tactics, even in the service of truth, tarnish our cause? there's a constant battle between the effectiveness of propaganda in rallying support and the potential harm in oversimplifying complex issues, normalizing manipulative tactics, and undermining critical thinking. Hartfield's work serves as a mirror for our present-day dilemmas. In an age where images are weapons and truth is surrounded by lies, his legacy challenges us to question the balance between impact and integrity. The truth is, a lot of propaganda has no interest in the truth at all. You may remember Napoleon as one of the best military strategists of all time, but what you may not know is that he was also an absolutely masterful propagandist. Check out this painting by Jacques-Louis David of Napoleon. It depicts him heroically crossing the Alps in pursuit of victory over Austria, just as Napoleon wanted to be remembered. But this painting is a perfect example of how art and design can become propaganda, straying from the historical truth. Like all good propaganda, the artwork uses contrast to sell the narrative. Napoleon's poised, confident pose is in sharp contrast to his horse's anxious demeanor. His deep blue uniform stands out against his golden cloak. These complement.
Speaking of Napoleon, the movie that they made a few years back, you can definitely tell what it's been used in a lot of examples. You can see how they really played into the gray. Like, it was a very gray movie.
Colors enhance the visual contrast and make Napoleon the focal point. The dramatic lighting illuminates Napoleon's face set against a drab background, emphasizing him further. The painting's dynamic movement, emphasized by diagonal lines, along with Napoleon's impressive military attire, all convey strength and authority. Napoleon's indifference to truthfulness was made crystal clear when he dismissed the artist David's suggestion for a detailed study to capture Napoleon's likeness for this painting. Napoleon objected and said, "It isn't the exactness of the features which gives the resemblance. It is the character that dictates what must be painted. Nobody knows if the portraits of the
So in
great
other
men
words, he was
resemble
ugly.
It is enough that their genius lives there." Very modest guy, right? This quote captures the essence of propaganda, emphasizing impression over precision, vibes over accuracy. Plus, Napoleon's name is deliberately associated with legendary figures like Hannibal and Charlemagne in the painting, highlighting his desire to be remembered as one of the great conquerors to cross the Alps. Of course, as you'd expect, the truth is far less glamorous. Paul Delaroche painted his version of the event, revealing a more accurate depiction of Napoleon's Alpine crossing. Instead of being at the forefront of his army, Napoleon probably followed several days behind them. Rather than riding on a horse, which obviously isn't real, he's shown on a mule. He didn't lead the charge, but instead was led by a servant. And he wasn't wearing a bright military uniform, but
There he is with his hand tucked in it, a hidden hand symbol.
instead wore a dull coat. This contrast between the grandeur of David's painting and the mundane reality depicted by Delaroche served as a reminder of how propaganda can distort truth through art and design. So I've saved the worst for last. Let's talk about how visceral emotion plays an important role in political narratives. Authoritarian regimes use design to transform flawed ideologies into captivating visions that can warp an entire population's collective psyche. These designs are powerful tools that target our primal instincts. This is one of the most visceral displays of power I've been able to find. The facade of Italian authoritarian ruler Benito Mussolini at the Palazzo Braschi. It's so absurd, it almost looks cartoonishly evil. Unfortunately, this was no joke. It was very, very real. Mussolini was Germany's most loyal European ally throughout World War II. So you might be wondering, why is Mussolini's face plastered on a facade, and why does it say "sì" over and over again? "Sì" means yes in Italian, but yes to what? It all started in the 1934 elections. Now, I use the term election loosely because everything was mostly predetermined. Voters could choose yes or no to approve or disapprove the list of deputies nominated by the Grand Council of Fascism. But they didn't get to choose who was on the ballot. So let's go through this. Imagine you're going to vote in this election. You walk up to the facade and you see the repeating word "yes" over and over again. This design choice strips away any nuance, focusing our attention towards the severity of the message, a clear manipulation of design to force obedience, making it feel like you're being watched by the dictator himself. The black on white lettering stands out in high contrast. The
I noticed
uniform and
that.
orderly arrangement of the letters is a showcase of authoritarian order. The hypnotic repetition of the word "yes" almost strips it of its meaning, transforming it more into a pattern that lulls you into hypnotic submission, designed to direct public action without any real thought. The lack of detail in the face, pared down to stark facets and a very severe expression, leaves no room for nuance or empathy. only the cold directive: vote yes or else. Now here's where it gets really crazy. You walk into the voting booth and see your options: yes and no. The yes option is in patriotic colors of the Italian flag, and the no option is in this nondescript, ugly brown paper. Finally, you don't just anonymously submit your vote. You have to hand your color-coded voting choice to an election official. They'll know if you voted yes or no. Maybe you're not a fan, but you think about the giant facade you just saw outside and say, you know what? Maybe I should keep my dissenting opinion to myself.
Yep.
Voters were presented with a choice that was really no choice at all. And of course, it worked. 15,000 people voted no. You know how many people voted yes? 10 million people endorsed the new fascist government. That's 99.84% who voted yes. Now, of course, with a deck this stacked against
there's a lot more to it. I mean, sure, they did use propaganda. Yeah, that's interesting, doesn't it? That is kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously propaganda to it, but I mean, there's a lot more to it that goes into it as well. I mean, one thing that's been insidiously ignored is that they really have never allowed people to understand what was going on in Germany and those parts of Europe and Italy when this happened. They don't tell you what was leading up to it, and I think that really takes a lot of the story of what really happened. You know, why were the people so ready to vote for these candidates?
Election wasn't even real. But honestly, with that kind of designed intimidation, they probably didn't need to rig anything. Remember, propaganda is about unifying, and Mussolini was unfortunately very successful in achieving that. This analysis of the Palazzo Baraschi's facade reveals how design and architecture are instruments of power, meticulously crafted to shape perceptions and dictate behavior. It's a stark reminder of how spaces and symbols can be designed to manipulate and control, leaving a permanent mark on the collective consciousness. In the shadow of this facade, we find not just a story of subjugation, but a call to resist the allure of simplicity in the face of complex truths. This is the legacy of the Palazzo Baraschi, a challenge to look beyond the facade, to question and to seek depth beyond the surface. Governments and political leaders use design to project an image of an unquestionable power. Regimes will spend decades developing custom typefaces and currencies. They'll make shocking posters. They'll attach political significance to ordinary objects. It's a veil that hides their vulnerability from public view. I was talking to my friend Kyle about this, and he said that all political regimes are fragile like an eggshell. A single crack, no matter how small, can lead to its complete unraveling. Design and propaganda exist to make you forget that all powerful nations eventually fall. History shows us that artists and designers have often found themselves at the mercy of their patrons, whether they be kings, corporations, or governments. We have to be careful. Edward Bernays mentions in his exploration of propaganda, propagandists can lose their sense of reality because in their universe, the truth is whatever the client wants the world to think is true. In this video, I've shown how propaganda has influenced and constrained people's expression throughout history. This is still happening today. As recently as December 2020, there were attempts to mandate neoclassical architecture for government buildings in the United States. The US government wanted to narrow the scope of cultural and intellectual discourse. Luckily, we didn't let it happen this time. Design and art is so effective as a tool for propaganda because it allows you to express what cannot be said. It hints at ideas that are far too sinister to be said out loud with words.
Absolutely.
It can manipulate reality, hiding evil ideas behind visual spectacle. The grander the visuals, the easier it becomes to elevate logically and morally indefensible ideas. Now, propaganda isn't necessarily bad, and design and art can also show things that are too beautiful and pure to express with words. But there's a responsibility to understand the power of our creations and the narratives they serve. If you're not a designer or artist, it can be hard to discern fact from fiction, especially when it's intentionally hidden from us. In the end, the most powerful weapon against propaganda isn't more propaganda. It's in our curiosity to look beyond the facade. Thanks to all of my friends and patrons for helping me with this video. I have entire...
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is, that's a very good analysis. I thought that was a good video. It showed Rome at the end, St. Peter's is what it was showing you. And all of that stuff was also set up to lull you away. I mean, the way that you could kind of see the light and the clouds in the, the frescoes on the ceiling, that stuff is also designed to present, godliness. That's how they manage even if you go to a Catholic mass today, you will, I mean, 99% of people will go to a Catholic mass and they will be lulled away into it. There's something about it. They call it ritual or tradition or whatever. It's just the idea of the clothes and the patterns and the cups and the everything. It is beautiful, and that is a hypnotic effect. That is what allows it to have an effect on people. That's what portrays godliness. The way they portray godliness. So, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. I've got to go to sleep. It's about 1 a.m. here, so I appreciate everyone tuning in. I will be back tomorrow. I'll find another interesting bit of information to present to you guys. I enjoyed everyone showing up tonight. I'm glad y'all were here. So, yeah, you're right. It did feel, yeah, it's exactly what superior and special. Yeah, it's huge and beautiful at the end of the day. I mean, it's one of those things that you can really see it for yourself. I mean, like if you go to any church, if you go to Rome, I'd love to go to Rome, but if you go, I mean, imagine standing inside of St. Peter's Basilica. Like, it is massive. You feel tiny, so you feel small and insignificant. Absolutely. Guys, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you haven't hit the like button on your respective platform, if you haven't followed the channel, please do so. It helps us out. And with that, guys, I will see you tomorrow. Everybody, be well.